Okay, good afternoon or good evening, depending on where you're dialing in from. My name's Jodie Miller, and I'll be working with you this evening and talking about pathways to a career in teaching. We also have Michael Smith here with us today, and he will also be sharing his experiences as a teacher. So I'd like to begin with an acknowledgement of country. The University of Queensland acknowledges the traditional owners and their custodianship of the lands on which we meet. We pay our respects to their ancestors and their descendants who continue cultural and spiritual connections to country. We recognise their valued contributions to Australia and global society. Okay, so this evening, what will be happening is we'll have some introductions. So we're going to begin with Michael Smith. Michael Smith is a Deputy Principal at Marsden State High, and he will be talking to you about why study teaching and why this is a great career to move into. I'll then, after Michael, talk about the Masters of Teaching programs at UQ, both the primary and secondary. There's going to be some polls which you'll undertake this evening. So we really encourage you to give us some feedback through those Q&As. And if you have any questions, you can type them into the chat and we'll be able to either answer them as we go or at the end of the webinar. Okay, so let's take off with our first poll. So our first Q&A, you'll see maybe in your tab. What are you hoping to learn from the webinar this evening? So we'll just wait for those responses to come in, and then when we have them, we'll share them on the screen. Okay, so most popular, all of the above. So wanting to learn about teaching pathways at UQ. What about future jobs in education? And Michael will be able to talk to that, and myself. And less so about education graduates, but Michael is a UQ education graduate and I'm a UQ academic. So we'll be able to answer any questions you have. All right, I'm going to hand over to Michael now, and he's going to talk to you about his experiences as an educator.
Okay, thank you and welcome to everyone this afternoon. First of all, I'd just like to say thank you for everyone signing up today and joining this chat that we're having, for basically taking the first step in what's potentially going to be an incredibly rewarding career for you. The theme that I'll be talking about today really is about how rewarding teaching is. Like, if I looked back to my uni days, and I graduated with arts in 1999 and I got my Bachelor of Education in 2001, and someone said to me, what would you change? I'd look back now and go, nothing. Really, am I a billionaire? Certainly not. I'm not raking it in. I don't have a Ferrari or anything like that. But really where I am at the moment and what I look at, I really couldn't ask for more. Like the fulfillment I get out of the job, the pleasure that I get in terms of working with the staff and the students and a variety of stakeholders is incredibly rewarding, important, and to me, it's a vital service to our community. So just a little bit about myself. As I said, I graduated from UQ initially with an arts degree in 1999. I did my honours in 2000 and then in the arts, in history. And I graduated from UQ for the last time in terms of that run of stuff in 2001 with my Bachelor of Education in secondary education, where my major was modern history and my minor was English. Starting off, I did country service, and I went to, I often, people don't know where I went. Emerald is probably the closest big town in the area, but I did 3 country towns in Capella, at Capella State High School, Springshaw State School, and Claremont at Claremont State High School. And one thing for people who are thinking about it, rural service is incredibly rewarding. I encourage people who are thinking about it, who are looking at maybe a bit of a sea change or even getting out of the rat race of the city. Teaching is a fantastic opportunity for that, because I know a lot of teachers, what they do is they will go rural because it offers the opportunities for that travel, for that different lifestyle, different experiences than what you get in the city. And at the end of the day, the country kids deserve good teachers, like I'm sure all of you would be. So I did my 3 years country service or rural service, rural and remote service, and I came back to the city and I spent 9 years at Forest Lakes State High School. During that time, teaching predominantly English. The funny thing was, even though the modern history was my major, I ended up enjoying teaching English a lot more, even though at university in my degree, I enjoyed the modern history component. And during that time, I really did get a lot out of it in terms of the interactions with the kids. And just a story in terms of that during my teaching, the classroom teaching that I did, it's a story about you never know how you're going to impact the kids and what the impact you have on students is. And there's one that really does come to mind, that in my second year at Forest Lakes State High School, I was teaching Year 12 English, and this particular student failed it and didn't hear from him again until about 7, 8 years down the track, when all of a sudden he contacted me and said, "Hey, can we catch up, have a coffee, just want to see how things are going." And it turned out that the coffee that he wanted to have was him talking about telling me what a successful life he was now having, in terms of he was getting into business and some acting or performing on stage, things like that. And he said to me, "Oh, I remember how disappointed you were in me when I didn't pass Year 12 English." And I was thinking, oh, just that impact that you do have on the students, and often you don't know in terms of that. So in terms of that, the impact that you do have on kids can be profound. The impact that you have that maybe you will never know. Sometimes you do, but other times you don't. And that in itself is rewarding. While it's a sad experience watching Year 12s, or from a secondary perspective, graduate and move on, and you very rarely see them again, it's also that satisfaction that what you've done is contribute to that young person's life. Hopefully you've made it a really positive contribution so that they go on to bigger and better things, and you're giving back to the society, because at the end of the day, these young people who are leaving your school are going to make a positive contribution back to the local community or whatever community they choose to live in. They are the future. They are the ones that are going to basically improve our society as a whole with their ideas, their energy, their vigor. And you've had a great opportunity to influence that. After that, and this is this will fit in with some of the career pathway stuff that people were saying they were interested in, and what career options. I'll also go into it a little bit later. I decided to take up some leadership opportunities. For me, it was completely by accident. I remember I was happily teaching my English class one Friday afternoon. At the end of the day, the deputy came down and said, "Oh, how would you like to give English hot a go?" And I said, "All right, when do I start?" He said, "Oh, Monday morning." Okay, I'll give it a go. At the end of that, what happened was I ended up at Marsden State High School. And in terms of the opportunities there, the leadership opportunities that not just at Marsden, but that was my context, has been phenomenal. Like I've presenting today is an example of that. If you said to me in 2001, what you'll be doing is you'll be presenting to future potential graduates, you'll be a deputy principal, you'll be traveling. Through some of the stuff I've done, I've actually traveled overseas as part of the teaching when I was lucky enough to win the National Teaching Award. Again, never would have thought I'd be able to achieve that. I did. I went to Singapore, did a study tour there. I've been across the country, been given plenty of opportunities. One of the roles outside of teaching for me is I'm also a national accreditor of university courses now for the initial teacher education stages. And I've gone across Australia, Victoria, New South Wales, up North Queensland to do all of that as a further opportunity. So all sorts of opportunities have popped up and do abound. Also, the connection with UQ has remained strong through all of that. So if you are thinking about a university to do your teaching at, I can highly recommend the University of Queensland, as well as the future support that is provided. Going on to that in terms of the future, one of the young ladies that's about to graduate from the university degree was someone that I taught, and basically I taught her in year 8 of all times, and she then popped up and said she wants to do teaching, and she said that basically the reason why she got an OP1 when she graduated was the impact of the teachers around her. You know, I'll lay claim to it, but it really wasn't me. It was all the teachers that she had and the impact of that. And so again, that influence on a young person's direction or future can be incredibly profound. And the good news for her is she's already found a job for next year. She emailed me and told me how she had found a job for next year. And again, like that sort of, it's hard to describe when you haven't lived through it, but it's almost like a pride that you do have, like the pride that you're seeing these young people that you did teach for 12 months or more who are now, well, one's a teacher themselves, or there's more than one that's a teacher themselves, but just that sense of pride, and there's a huge sense of satisfaction personally that comes with that. Some of the stuff that, following your survey, that you're interested in terms of the employability, the first thing I'll tell you is there hasn't been a better time to get into teaching. One of the things that's come out is that there is a teacher shortage, and it's going to get worse. I think it's by 2022, they're saying nationwide, potentially 45,000 teacher shortage. That's across Australia. So really, the chances of employability, I would say, are incredibly high. I do know that talking to a lot of the graduates this year, that a lot of them already have jobs pinned down. 12 of the UQ graduates have a job at Marsden for next year, when we go from 2850 to over 3,000 students at Marsden. So to cover the growth and the need for extra teachers, we've got a dozen UQ graduates and counting. That'll potentially grow over coming weeks. So in terms of the employability, a Master's of Teaching from the University of Queensland is definitely beneficial. The quality of the program that they produce is high, and the employability prospects out of that are very, very good. Like, never can promise anything, obviously, but the chances of getting a job are incredibly high. The other thing is that I think COVID has really highlighted, in terms of it's never been a better time to get into teaching, is the stability. Regardless of what happened all around us, one of the constants still was the world needs teachers. We still need more teachers. We've still got more young people. The supply line, the clientele is not going anywhere, unlike the airlines and other industries, tourism, unfortunately. I'd love to be on a cruise ship right now, but that's another story. But in terms of employability, young people are still being born every day, every week, every minute, every second. We need teachers, and we need a constant supply of teachers. And the thing is, my experience through the COVID was that teachers weren't being fired. They weren't losing their jobs. They weren't going on to the Centrelink or the Job Start and those sorts of things. That they still had their jobs. They were still working with young people, maybe in different ways, but the need for teachers was still there. The need of teachers is going to remain for a long, long time. It's not one of those jobs that can be automated. So the stability of the career is an incredibly attractive prospect. And I know a number of teachers, and one that came to mind was we've got at Marsden a former NRL player, and he said how thankful he was to now be in teaching because with all the ups and downs in the sports and that industry that he was in, to be having a permanent job as a teacher meant that he was able to put the food on the table for his family. He wasn't having to worry about where the money was coming from. Like it's a consistent job regardless of which sector you're in, because teaching isn't going anywhere. On that as well, the opportunities just aren't in the classroom. And that's something that often people do think, that the classic progression is often that you're in the classroom, you're in there for 20, 30 years or however long you're in there. You start to grey like I am a bit, and you get to a head of department level, and then you get to a deputy and then a principal, and that's the end of your career. Okay, I can tell you that's definitely not the case. And that old head of department that was like the subject master or the curriculum head of department, there's so many other opportunities now across schools in terms of that leadership. Like a head of department just isn't about a subject, whether it's science, English, maths. A lot of schools now have heads of department around teaching and learning, which could be behaviour management. It could be how to teach or working with teachers to teach, which is my background. I also did a bit of curriculum, but my main background was teaching other teachers to become better. Professional development, delivery of professional development. You've got heads of special education. You've got the advisory teachers there around the different disabilities and the different assistance to provide those students with. There's heads of junior school or senior school or year levels that work around the pastoral care, the student well-being, the behaviour management even. There's a whole lot of student interaction there around those leadership positions. There's guidance officers. Like the vast majority of the guidance officers also have a teaching background. I know at Marsden, it's one of the guidance officers, she's PE is her background. She was a PE teacher before she became a guidance officer. There's curriculum writing jobs. If you like and love curriculum, there's jobs around that are available. There's wider advisory, like not just within the school, but across regions for behaviour management or disabilities or Indigenous education. There's Indigenous education roles and Indigenous education teachers and things like that you can work with. There's a variety of roles there, and beyond the principal, there is then those wider leadership roles around leading not just a school, but a group of schools or a region, or in the head office, working in head office across a range of projects. There's project officers, so you focus on a particular project, and there's plenty of projects always on the go. The ones that come to mind are like mentoring, helping retain teachers in the profession, early career projects, things like that. And a lot of those are also opportunities that you can access. For those of you who are potentially worried, thinking, oh, well, it'll be a step back. I'm looking at potentially a career change, and I don't want to start from the bottom. The thing is, with teaching, you don't actually start at the bottom, because think of it this way: what other job are you instantly overseeing and responsible for the performance of 25 to 28 other people, their data, their behaviour, the outcomes, all of that? In effect, you are a leader in your classroom. You are responsible for those kids in your class. But the good news is, if you are a mid-career change potentially and going, well, I'm going to go from 90K back down to 70, there's the potential that when you graduate, this does apply across all the systems, and I know it does in the Department of Employment and Training, that they will look at that background, and dependent on what it is, so again, I can't make promises in every person's unique situation, they will potentially push you up the pay points. So you won't start necessarily at the bottom one if you do have some background in particular areas. The departments or the Catholic education systems will look at it and will consider pushing you up pay points. So if you are worried about, in terms of the opportunities, starting over again and the lesser salary and the potential impacts on that, it's not always the case. More often than not, with people who do have life experience, the systems will recognise that life experience. It's definitely something that they will recognise. It is definitely something that they do take into consideration. Okay, so it's a factor that I know does worry people sometimes. The other thing is, in terms of the opportunities that are there, it's also not about time. There's no such thing about you've got to do 10 years in the classroom or 15 or 20. I found there was a gentleman at Marsden who started off, he's been teaching years and he's a permanent deputy principal at another school now, but his background was around some of that management and leadership. And in his 4th year of teaching, he became a head of department. And by about his 6th, 7th year, he was a deputy principal. So that life experience that you potentially have from other things you have done can definitely come into play. So it's one of those where the opportunities are available from other career pathways that you may have drawn on. So that's just something important to consider. Going back to the why, like the lifestyle. For me, I've got 2 young kids, and part of it is, for me, a huge benefit with kids who are 10 and 8 years old, brilliant age that they are now, just to interact with. I've got the same holidays they do. I get to have the same holidays. I get to hang out with them. We get to go wherever. And obviously COVID sort of has limited that a little bit, but we can do all of that. It's a different day all the time. As silly as it sounds that you're stuck in this timetable, you're working with people. And when you work with people, it's a different day every day. There will be good days, there will be bad days, there'll be in-between days. But the perfect thing is that it is different. It's never actually the same. And it goes back to, you're working with people. That's the most important thing. If you enjoy working with people, then teaching is definitely for you. All right. I've written down here that you are the ultimate influencer. You see all those Instagram models and all of those sorts of ones, but you think about it, you have a massive impact and influence on those young people's lives. You have a real genuine and positive impact, because it is about improvement of them, not eating a Tide Pod or something that they do and all those silly things. You have that benefit for their future. You really are. The other thing is, in terms of some of the opportunities that I have written down, people worry about starting afresh again, or things around banks and loans and things like that. I can tell you that even the first year teachers I have, they're all signing up and getting home loans, buying houses. The banks are happy to sign off on them, because when they see teacher, they do see stability. They do see that, first of all, you're a good member of society. You're a respected member of society. But second of all, it's that stability around the job. They know that teachers, they're not going anywhere. They know that teachers have a job. You're going to keep your job, back yourself, work hard, you're going to have a job. And so the further benefits around that is incredibly important. So end of the day, I recommend to you, become teachers. It is the most rewarding career that you could potentially get into. And like I said, sometimes you don't see it immediately. Sometimes you never see it, but you see it enough over your time to realize that the job you have done is, at the end of the day, we're in it for the kids. We're in it for the improvement of the kids. And to see those outcomes, there's nothing like it. And the only way that you can experience that is to sign up to teaching yourself.
Thank you so much, Michael, for sharing that with us and sharing your experiences and your story. So I can see that there's lots of questions coming through on the Q&A, so I've been keeping an eye out for that, and hopefully I'll be able to answer some of these in the next part of the presentation. So we have another poll. We're interested in what programs you are interested in undertaking at UQ. So if you could just take a second to complete that. Okay, so the results are in. So we have majority of people looking at doing a Masters of Teaching Secondary, followed by a Masters of Teaching Primary, and some people who are looking at potentially a Bachelor of Education. So I'm going to talk to you now about the different pathways into the education degrees at UQ. To give you some background, I undertook a Bachelor of Justice and National Security, was actually my first degree. I didn't go into a Masters of Teaching or a DipEd in Education. I started the whole 4-year undergraduate degree. And I chose to do that because I was becoming a primary school teacher and I wanted to have that full experience of special, learning right across all the areas. So there are benefits of doing the BEd for those people who are here, but I'm going to talk to you about the Masters program. So if you have further questions about the Bachelor of Education, primary or secondary, we'll be happy to answer those towards the end. So a Masters for Teaching Primary at UQ is a really specialised design unique course. It's a 2-year intensive program. So that sometimes means that you undertake more than 4 subjects in the semester. Your pracs are condensed together, so you meet the number of days required to become a teacher. There are options for part-time in this degree, and we can work out pathways for you to do this as a part-time degree, but there is no way at this present point for you to intensify that to shorten the degree. And the reason being is that we have to meet particular external requirements, and you need to meet particular requirements to become a registered teacher. And there's really no way that we can do that in a short condensed period. So this is what the program looks like. This is the overview of the program for the Masters of Teaching Primary. So in the first year you undertake 4 courses, and we have students engaging in English and mathematics, but we also have broader courses around global issues and contemporary theories of development and learning. In the first year, you'll see that there is an increase in the second semester to 5 subjects, and this is where you also will undertake one of your first practicum courses in the degree. Then second year, following in a very similar manner, you'll have a prac course in the second year first semester, and then you'll also have a prac course in the second year second semester. But you can see in the Bachelor, in the Masters of Teaching Primary, we cover all courses and all content areas that you're going to teach as a primary school teacher. So as a primary school teacher, you are a generalist, but here at UQ, we also offer you the opportunity to specialise in either mathematics, numeracy, or English literacy as a primary school teacher. And these are really 2 highly sorted areas by employers for primary school teachers. So this means that when you are undertaking your professional experience, some of those areas you'll focus on more intensely around mathematics or around English. You'll also, you can see here the way the program's designed, we build these features within the subject domain, so within mathematics or within English, but also across subjects. So when you're looking at supporting diverse learners and building an inclusive primary classroom, you'll think about how you do that also for English or for mathematics. So it's really refining your skills across these areas of specialisation as a primary school teacher. These are always the really important things that people ask us about is, how many prac days do I need to do? So you'll see here that you have 10 in your first year, 20 in the first semester second year, and 30 in your semester 2 second year course. So currently, the Masters of Teaching, in a pre-COVID world, we're on campus, we're engaging with you most days of the week, and then you'll have special days dedicated for you to go out and work in classrooms in schools. Currently, we're all online, and you still have the opportunities to go out to schools and work in schools for professional experience. All right, so how does this differ to the Masters of Teaching Secondary? So the Masters of Teaching Secondary is designed as well over a 2-year program. There are similar subjects you'll see where we have global issues in society, Indigenous knowledges in education, building inclusive classrooms. But what becomes quite different about the program structure in the secondary is that you'll have curriculum study courses. So you'll have a Part B or a Part C curriculum studies course that you undertake. So here at UQ, we offer the following areas for your curriculum studies as a secondary teacher. So you might become a senior science teacher, junior and senior science teacher, and a maths specialisation as well. You might focus on drama, and then film and media, and film, TV and new media. So there's opportunity for you to build your curriculum areas over the 2-year degree. Now, I saw somebody ask in the chat, if I have legal studies and I can't remember the other area, can I also be a maths teacher? And yes, you can. You can pick these pathways as you come into the master's degree. So very similar, but just slightly different. In the secondary, you have in the first year, in the first semester, you get to go out for 5 days. They're just 5 single days, so not in a block. So every Wednesday, you might go out to a classroom and observe students working in the classroom. In semester 2, it's a 10-day professional experience that's broken up with 5 single days and then a 5 block days, so a full week in a school. And then you can see we have a 6-week, 2 6-week block programs for the secondary. All right, so that's kind of how those 2 courses are made up at UQ. We've got another poll for you, and we're interested to know what maybe your undergraduate degree is, or what you're thinking about, you know, what those areas were prior to coming to UQ. Okay, so you can see quite a number of people, almost balanced to some degree between business, economics, law, arts and STEM areas. So that's really helpful for us to know. Now, when you apply for your degree through QTAC, you might need to meet some requirements to get in terms of the learning areas in which you'll be undertaking. So if you don't meet those requirements, there's some other alternative pathways for you at UQ. And it could be that you undertake a diploma in arts or a diploma in science. Now, you don't need to complete the full courses, but you can take subjects within each of those courses to build up that area of specialisation that you may already have in your previous degree. We in the School of Education encourage you to contact, so we have Ben online today. He works in our office at UQ in education. We strongly encourage, if you're thinking about applying for a Masters of Teaching Primary or a Masters of Teaching Secondary, to get in contact with us, and we can let you know if you will be eligible to get in based on the subjects you've undertaken in your undergraduate degree. So Ben or myself or a program director will look at your actual academic transcript to see if you meet the requirements before applying to QTAC. So there are some details where you can actually go to, if you were looking to get in contact with somebody at the School of Education, you can just email them directly. That's also our phone line. So if you ring the phone line and you asked Ben to speak to Ben, he may be able to help you if he's available. Alternatively, we also have information on our website and the Future Students website at UQ. Now, I can see there are many questions in the Q&A, and I'm just going to stop sharing my screen at this point. Just give you an opportunity if you want to take a photo of those details so that you have them available. And then what we might do is we'll stop sharing, and then we can go to some questions and actually try to answer more closely what you're doing. All right, so Ben, do you want to flick your camera on so we can see your see you this afternoon?
Yep, just trying to get the camera working.
Oh, that's all right. Sorry.
Okay, there we go.
Oh, there he is. There's Ben. Sorry. Okay, so I can see we've got a number of questions. Let's start at the top. So can I be a teacher aide while studying an education degree? So yes, I do know many people who have actually been a teacher aide and studied their education degree at the same time. Schools love it. You come to school with some of the most up-to-date research and techniques for teaching children. You also get a great experience to actually see a lot of teaching in action. So that's a fantastic opportunity if you are a teacher aide or if you are thinking about having a part-time job while undertaking your degree. Would you agree, Michael? Is that a useful, would be useful, I imagine, for you?
Yes, and I also find that the teacher aide roles are actually really beneficial just for that extra experience of it's almost like wider observations. And I always say the more time you're in a classroom, the better off your beginning teaching will be, because you experience a variety of things. It should probably be noted as well, I think, that if you are a teacher aide, more often than not, and I'm sort of speaking on the uni's behalf now, but that conflict of interest, you can't then do it at that school. So I know on my end, if I see a teacher aide of mine pop up, I've got to go, hey, placement office, I think that this person should be placed here. So there's just some things around that.
Yeah, so definitely we don't normally send you back into your workplace to undertake your professional experience, as that's a graded piece of assessment. Okay, I'm having a look. So do I need to study a bachelor's to go into the Masters of Teaching? So yes, you would normally have an undergraduate bachelor's degree. And it says, or can I stop my bachelor's degree and go straight, a Bachelor of Education, go straight to the Masters? So no, you can't stop your Bachelor of Education degree and transfer into a Masters of Teaching. We'd actually, it will be faster for you to stay in your Bachelor of Education and complete that degree and then move into a job post that. So that's the best way forward from there. And if you've got a Bachelor of Education, you don't really need to undertake a Masters of Teaching degree. But if you're looking for a Masters program, you can move into the Masters of Educational Studies at UQ. And we have a number of areas such as guidance counselling, psychology. I don't know, Ben, what other areas do we have? We have quite a number.
Yes.
Leadership. So that might be a way to go if you're looking at undertaking a master's qualification.
Sorry.
No, you're right, Ben.
I'm just going to give the full list of study areas for the
that'd be great.
Studies. So we've got behaviour management, curriculum, guidance counselling and careers, leadership, psychology education, new and quite popular, and supporting diverse learners.
Great, thank you. All right, next question I can see here is, what is your advice for undertaking practicum if you're employed in another career while completing the course? So you have to undertake your practicum. It's a required component to your degree. You will not graduate if you haven't undertaken a practicum. I have lots of students who are actually working at the same time as undertaking their Masters of Teaching. And look, they do use their annual leave to help them undertake their prac. Also, they have a really good relationship with their employer and explain to their employer that they're undertaking a degree that requires them to do practicum. Practicums are blocked and they are at a particular time, because you could imagine all universities trying to place all students to have practicum experiences is quite a challenge. So these are set dates and they are set early. So you'll be able to even see now the dates that are set for next year for professional experience. Okay, I'm scrolling down. There's lots of queries. Michael, in your mind, what would be the biggest thing that sets apart a good teacher from a great teacher?
That's a really difficult question, because it is based on the individual. Like, really to me, I think a lot of people start off as a good teacher and ultimately do progress to be a great teacher. It looks different depending on who you are. I think a lot of it really does come down to you yourself are motivated to continue to learn. You're resilient. In other words, you bounce on those bad days. You learn from stuff. You can take feedback, even if sometimes it can be a little bit confronting or not what you're expecting. And the other thing to it really is the time to experience all of it, to build your toolkit, because no one's great on day one. You can be incredibly good for your career point, but the thing that does really distinguish it is the time that you're in the career and what you put into it and what you get back. I often say that you get what you give out of teaching. So if you give a lot into it, you will get a lot back and you will grow. So, it's one of those. Different people are identified for different things, like a whole lot of stuff. Different people are great at stuff. I'm seen as great in particular areas, but I also know that I've got a lot to develop and growing in other areas, and that, I'm good or average or whatever, word you want to use. But it's just a constant learning process. So hopefully my sort of non-answer answers it, but really it comes down to that time, the willingness of you to learn.
Yep, I'd agree. And just and keep learning and just keep up with contemporary practices all the time. Okay, another question we have is, I have a master's degree and a Bachelor in engineering from overseas, and what are my chances to be eligible to do a Master's of Teaching? Ben?
Okay, so basically there's different entry requirements for the Master of Teaching primary or secondary. If you're looking to enter into the Master of Teaching primary, we're looking for the equivalent of 8 subjects or a year of full-time study spread across any of the primary teaching areas. We do have a document that lists the teaching areas, and we're going to distribute this to everybody who's in attendance either tomorrow or sometime soon, so just keep an eye on your emails. For secondary, you need 2 teaching areas. And for each of your teaching areas, you need to have completed 6 subjects, including a mix of entry-level courses and more advanced second and third year courses as well. With engineering, you'd be looking at teaching areas like physics, potentially maths, although engineering doesn't necessarily meet the requirements for maths, so we would need to have a look at your academic record. We would really recommend, if you have any questions, if you're in doubt whether you meet the teaching area requirements, send your academic record through to us. We'll have a look and let you know where you stand, if you need to do any additional studies to meet your teaching area, or if you're ready to come in for next year.
Yep, great. All right, so another question we've got is, do you have any advice how to decide whether to be a primary or a secondary teacher? I'm always going to say I'm a primary teacher, so I love being a generalist teacher and being across all subject areas and working with young students in their in the early stages of their education journey. And I'm sure Michael's going to say he loves teaching secondary. You tend to be drawn to those particular students and their needs and how they are as learners. So my advice to you would be to decide, whether you want to be a discipline expert and just focus in on potentially teaching, those two areas in a very deep and concentrated way, or whether you like to be a generalist. So teach English, HASS, mathematics, science, art, all the subjects is what primary school teaching offers you.
I'd support that. I really, it's in many ways a personal question for you to, like, we've got our preferences, our background, our experiences, but at the end of the day, it is something you've got to decide, really. Do you want to deal with big kids or little kids? I know people, a lot of them who do secondary say to me, I'm doing secondary because I just can't stand the little kids. It's something that I don't want to face. I want to deal with the specific subject and be able to drill deeply into it. I know others. When I was at Springshire, I did work in a primary school, and others are like, well, this is where really at that young age you have massive influence and begin to shape them. So, it's really a personal preference, and it really is up to you, and what you prefer, what your inclination is. Do you want them a bit older? Do you want to drill deeper into it, get into Hamlet or physics or whatever your subject area is, or the younger kids and some of that more play-based? Because the secondary school, I suppose the difference is it's a bit more around that, right, let's get our heads down and study and things like that. So it's one, really, if you are wondering, I'd even ask maybe to go visit a school or do a bit of an observation and say, hey, I'm thinking about this, but would you mind if, some schools may say no, but I know a lot would be happy to sort of facilitate that or have a chat to you about it and then make it up in your own mind.
Yeah, I agree. I think that's probably one of the best approaches you can take. We've got a couple more questions. So how many hours would you recommend to dedicate to study in this program? Look, we do try to say that it is a full-time course that you're undertaking. You are doing a full-time program. So each subject has a number of credit points attached to it. And within that, if it was a normal unit would take you about 10 hours a week we dedicate to study. Look, we know that's not everybody needs that and not everybody does that. So you have about 3 hours of contact time per subject with your lecturer and your tutor. And then from there, it's really your dedication into that independent study. So you need time to do your readings, to do your assessments, to prepare for your next lectures. So that can fluctuate depending on when assessments are due. You might be working more hours a week compared to when there aren't assessments due. So it is a full-time load, but I know many people and many master's students are able to balance it with work because you are a mature age student, you've been to university before, and you know how this kind of all works together.
Just on class timetables, Jodie, I've noticed somebody asked if the course can be studied externally online. It is an internal-only program. There have been some external sessions offered for certain courses because of the pandemic situation that's going on, but by and large, it is something that you will need to be in Brisbane to undertake, especially for your placement courses, because we really only place people in the greater Brisbane region. There are limited opportunities for rural placements and things, but it is an internal program.
Yeah, it is an internal program. Okay, so on that, there's another question that kind of links to this as well. Would you say the time commitment would be the same for the bachelor's degree? And yes, it is. It's the same. You have 3 hours of contact per subject face-to-face, and then it's your independent study load on top of that. Okay, I'm just having a look. There's some questions about the Masters in Education. And one of the questions is, would a Masters of Education lead to a teaching qualification? So Ben, I don't know whether you would be able to answer this. We do have international students who come over to work in the Masters of Education, and they meet the requirements to teach in their own countries. Many Australian students who have undertaken a degree at an Australian institution often already have an education degree. So this is a way to further develop and deepen their understanding, where they might want to be a principal. So they take the leadership masters courses, and then they've kind of got some qualifications around being a principal, or they enhance their education qualifications to become a guidance counsellor and take that area. So it's really depending on what credit point course you take. Is that right, Ben? Over to you.
Yes. So first things first, the Master of Educational Studies is definitely not a teacher registration pathway if you're looking to become a school teacher in Queensland. It's not recognised. It doesn't cover the necessary curriculum for primary or secondary, or have the placement hours that are required. Like Jodie said, it is primarily used either for people who it could potentially be recognised towards teaching overseas. So I'm only talking about local registration requirements. And it's also often used for people who don't necessarily want to be teachers, but are looking for employment in the education sector. So you don't necessarily need to be a registered teacher to work in educational environments necessarily. So, and it's also used for people who are already registered as teachers for professional development in assorted directions.
Yeah. Now, there's a question here. What is the advantage of studying a more specialised area, for example, legal studies or business? Both are listed under humanities at the QCAA, so the Queensland Curriculum Assessment Authority. Would it not be better to study humanities more broadly? Michael, being a secondary principal, deputy principal, I would believe that the humanities, if you're studying it more broadly, would be the junior school, whereas when you've got those legal studies and business, really kind of tailor you into that upper secondary component as well.
Yep. So that's correct. I suppose it's like in the humanities, modern history, ancient history, geography, legal studies, the business itself, in the sciences, chemistry, physics, biology, earth sciences, psychology, the math methods, essential maths, the general English sort of, those ones are the year 11 and 12 specializations. If I see that someone comes into it and their major is, say, legal studies, then in my mind, I'm potentially employing you either for a year 11 or down the track for a year 11 and 12 legal studies class. But my assumption would also be that you'll be teaching years 7 to 10 humanities more broadly. Likewise, if you're a physics teacher, the assumption would be senior year 11 and 12 physics, absolutely, but 7 to 10 science. So I'd recommend, if you're thinking of your subject areas, as you said, Jodie, go have a look at the QCAA website, have a look at the streams of the subject areas to get an idea, and sort of look at that, because if, as an employer, and when I do look at those sorts of things, if it does say the legal, I will make assumptions, and they're generally based on the QCAA lines. Legal studies equals also humanities teacher. Physics teacher or chemistry teacher equals junior science as well. So keep that in mind.
Yes. I've just got a question about timetabling. So most classes are run during the day for the Masters of Teaching. It's also a little bit dependent on when your tutors are available. So sometimes your tutors are practicing teachers. So they might be having classes outside of school hours. But your lectures can run at UQ, anywhere from 8 a.m. right through to 8 p.m. But majority of them we do have kind of clustered appropriately for you during the day. And then you can pick those tutes which might suit you, or those tute times that suit you better. Placements. There's a question regarding professional placements. Are these all or in around Brisbane, or can they be organised elsewhere in Queensland? So they are in Brisbane, but there are opportunities for you to undertake prac or professional experience in a remote placement or a rural placement. This comes at, there are particular costs around that. You need to support yourself to be able to live in those places. So there are opportunities within our degrees to do that at UQ.
I might jump in there, Jodie,
Yeah.
in terms of it. So we do also at Marsden work with a number of rural schools. There is the possibility, and I do know that rural schools are always keen for placements, but the tyranny of distance sometimes gets in the way. If you are interested, talk to the university and talk to the schools themselves. If that's obviously, don't just go randomly, do it through an appropriate process. But the schools will often help you. There's things called beyond the range grants where you can get up to $5,000, and there's a few different criteria as to how much you get that will effectively cover payment if you do wish to do a rural or remote placement. And some of the places we're talking about could be potentially like Tully, so not that far from Cairns itself, Spinifex, things like that. So you could get direct flights there pretty much. They will also, dependent, potentially have teacher accommodation that they could put you into. So some do, some don't. Depends on context, but there are some possibilities that and grants that you can apply for if that's something you're keen on. And I know that if you are keen to go to a particular area, the schools will more often than not be very keen to try and help get you some financial support if they can through some of these grants.
Yeah, I agree. There are a couple of questions around qualifications for teaching at higher education institutions. I'm going to just cluster these all together. Majority of people who lecture, like myself, at a higher institution has a PhD. So we've undertaken a Doctor of Philosophy in our areas. So if you're a nurse, you might have undertaken a PhD in nursing, and therefore you have now kind of stepped into academia and you can work as a lecturer. Once you're working as a lecturer, sometimes you undertake graduate certificates in teaching in higher education. So if you have a PhD qualification, more often than not, you are eligible to apply for a job at a university. You wouldn't need to undertake a Masters of Teaching, because these are really about getting qualifications to register you as a primary or a secondary school teacher. Hopefully that's answered those kinds of questions for you. All right, having a look, I guess we've got time for a couple more questions. Michael, there's a question for you. Opportunities to work in curriculum and professional development. Oh, well, it's a question about pathways into this. And would you recommend, if this is an area, that this person is particularly interested in? They're currently completing an undergraduate degree that's not in education, and they're considering doing a Masters of Teaching or Education because they want to kind of go into curriculum and professional development. I've got a couple of takes on that, but I just thought, do you have any expertise you'd like to give, considering that was posed to you?
So first of all, in terms of if that's something you want to get into, working in the curriculum and professional development within the education and teaching sector, then I'd change it from considering a Masters of Teaching or Education to you need to do it. Really, the pathway would be to start off in the classroom. Most of the people who are in the curriculum branch or work in the curriculum, QCAA or the College of Teachers, there's a few different pathways there. They all have been teachers. They've developed through the university the practice around the unit planning and building up that curriculum, and then a couple of years experience in the trenches, so to speak, working on that stuff before they go into it. It's really important to have a deep level of understanding. The professional development as well, it's the same thing. It's about building your toolkit. If you're going to be developing professional development to teachers, teachers want to know, well, what do you bring to the table? What experience? And yes, there are private companies that do the professional development, but I can't think of one off the top of my head who delivers professional development to schools or teachers or educational bodies in general who A, does not have a teaching qualification, and B, has not done at least sort of a good 4 or 5 years teaching even before they've gone into those pathways. So particularly the curriculum, it really is about that practice. Same with the professional development.
Yep, I agree. It's exactly the same. And that's if you are looking to do that in an education sector, you will need an education degree to support you to do that. Okay, so there are some other questions that we still have. I'm conscious of time. So we might need to, if there's any last questions, just please pose them now. Okay, so I can't see any more. And look, we are really, really thankful for you coming this evening and joining our webinar. If you have some further queries that you need answered, please do not hesitate to send us an email. We'd be more than happy to answer those questions for you. We also will be sending out an email to you in the coming days with some information about the programs, and then that will give you some more details and some more contact information if you would like to get in contact with us all. But I'm really looking forward to you if you undertake your Masters of Primary or Masters of Secondary. We hope you are here in 2021. I will get to teach you semester 1, 2021, if you were in the Masters of Primary. And yeah, just keep reading, keep engaging in that stuff, and, you know, pick those pathways that work for you. So thank you. Enjoy your night. Thank you, Michael, and thank you, Ben, for all your help this evening.
Thank you, everyone. And hopefully you do sign up. That's my message.
Sign up.
I know that everybody's got a lot of questions that weren't necessarily answered, so I would just stress, don't hesitate to get in touch with us. Send an email through to education.uq.edu.au. There's also Postgraduate Advice Week is currently ongoing, so there's a bit of a chat function attached to that. So yeah, get in touch with us and we'll be happy to help.